welcome back to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we've got our rules video for Lord of the Rings, the card game. It's a little bit of a lengthy video, but there are a good number of rules to go with this game, so let's get right into it without taking up any more time. There are three types of decks that you're going to deal with in Lord of the Rings, the card game. First, you're going to have the player deck, which will consist of ally cards, attachment cards, as well as event cards. Then you've got the encounter deck, which is going to have enemy cards, treachery cards, and location cards. And on certain missions, it will also have objective cards. And then finally, you've got the quest deck, which is going to explain to you how to set up the quest and then what your specific objectives are to move to each phase of the quest as you play. Okay, now let's take a look at what a quest card actually looks like. You can see up top here, you've got the title of the card itself, and just below that is going to be the title of the scenario. Over here, you've got the sequence number for this particular card. Down here you've got the scenario icon as well as the other encounter card icons necessary for the scenario. You've got some flavor text right here and then setup information right here. And then on the other side, a lot of the same information, except you have the number of progress tokens required to get past it. You can see that there's more flavor text here explaining the story and no setup information because this side only occurs after you've done the setup. Now let's take a closer look at an enemy card. You can see up here you've got the engagement cost, the threat strength, the attack strength, the defense strength, the health of the enemy, the title of the enemy. Over here is the set of cards it belongs to. You've got some information here about how the enemy will attack you or any effects they have. And down here you have the card's shadow effect. With a treachery card, you can see we have the set of cards that this belongs to, the icon for the set right there. And then you have information about what occurs when the card is drawn and some flavor text. And you also have the title of the card running up the side right here. With a location card, you have the title of the card up top here. Right here you have the threat strength of the location. Here you have the number of progress tokens you're going to need to get past the location. As before, you have the set icon for the card right here, and then any information you need about the location itself that might affect the players as well as some flavor text. And with the objective cards, you have a title up top here, the scenario it belongs to, the set icon for the set of cards, and all the information required to understand how to use this objective and what's required to get past it. Now let's take a look at some of the cards in the player deck. Some things to keep in mind if you construct your own player deck rather than using the ones that come with the base set, is that no more than 3 copies of any card may be included per deck. And the game does come with 4 starter decks already set and ready for you to play with, but they do each encompass only 1 sphere of influence. So on the ally card, you're going to have the cost of the card up here, the willpower strength, the attack strength, and the defense strength, the health of the ally, the sphere of influence it belongs to, the title or name of the ally, and then any effects the ally has. For attachment cards, you have the title, the cost, the effects of the attachment, and some flavor text as well. And over here, again, is the sphere of influence. For event cards, you're going to have the title running up the side here. It's going to have the cost up above that, the effect of the event, and then flavor text below, and the sphere of influence over on the side there. The spheres of influence basically give you some idea of how you may need to play a card in terms of your play style. There's 4 spheres of influence. You've got lore, which is indicated by that green book there. Spirit with the snowflake looking thing right there. This is leadership with whatever that is. and then tactics with the hilt of the sword there. And it's also possible to have an unaligned card, meaning that it does not have any particular sphere of influence, and that's indicated by there being nothing in that right side of the card where the sphere of influence normally would be. Heroes represent the main characters of your group, and will be the primary source, if not the only source of resources for you during the game. Players can choose 1 to 3 heroes when they begin the game. Many cards are going to have this symbol right here, which is a symbol indicating the card is unique. What it means when a card is unique is that only one copy of this card may be in play at any given time. You can have multiple copies of it in your deck, as can your teammates. However, only one person can have one of these cards in play at any time. If a card indicates that it is restricted, as this one does, you can have a maximum of 2 restricted attachments attached to one hero at a time. If you were to attach a third, you would then have to discard one of the original 2. Keep in mind that when a card effect refers to a character, that can be either a hero or an ally. To begin setup, you'll shuffle both the player deck and the encounter deck and choose 3 heroes. Once you've chosen your 3 heroes, you're going to look at each of their threat levels and add them up, and then set your threat tracker to that number. You'll need to have a place nearby for your damage tokens, progress tokens, and resource tokens. If you have more than one player, or if you're playing with 2 decks by yourself, you'll need to choose the first player, and after doing this, you'll draw a starting hand of 6 cards. Next, you'll make sure that your quest cards are in sequential order, always starting with 1A on the top, working your way down. And you'll note that the encounter deck that we shuffled up earlier would have been made from these 3 sets of cards. You'll also follow any setup instructions on the front of the first card. Also make sure there's space next to the encounter deck for the staging area, which is where you'll be placing enemy cards as they come out of the encounter deck, as well as location cards. Also, you want to have a space next to the deck for your discard pile as enemies are defeated and locations are explored. Phase 1 is the resource phase, and the first thing you'll do is you'll take 1 resource for each of your heroes and add it to their resource pool, which I usually keep down at the bottom of the heroes. And then you're going to draw 1 card from the player deck and add it to your hand. So if it's the first hand of the game, you'll now have 7 cards in your hand. Keep in mind that if the player deck runs out, you do not reshuffle it. You simply have to use whatever cards you happen to have left in your hand. The next phase is the planning phase. Now let's pretend this is my hand of cards. It's a little hard for me to use one hand to show you everything I need to do with the hand of cards. So we'll just say this is my hand of cards and it's in my hand. You would not be playing with an open hand like this. And you'll start with the first player and then proceed clockwise. Now the planning phase is the only phase in which players can play ally cards and attachment cards. So what you'll do is you'll look and see how many resources you have, and you can see I have 1 resource for each of my heroes, and you'll see each of my heroes is from a different sphere of influence. In order to purchase a card out of your hand, you're going to have enough resources from that particular sphere of influence. This, for instance, let's say I wanted to play this card right here, the Erebor Hammersmith. You can see that he is in the lore sphere of influence, and up at the top there you can see it costs 2 resources to bring him out. Well, my lore hero only has 1 resource, so I can't bring him out. In fact, the only card in this hand right now that I could play would be either this event card here or that attachment. And you can attach this to a hero. So what I would do is I would look at this, I would decide, yeah, you know what, I want to play this. I would spend the 1 resource, which simply means putting that resource back into the resource pile there. and then this will get attached to the hero like that. Now let's say that we wanted to play our Gandalf card. He has no sphere of influence, so you can actually use resources from any sphere of influence to bring him out, including multiple different ones. So if I had these resources, 2, 2, and 1, I could take all 5 of those. As you can see, 5 is his cost. And I could take all 5 of those, put them back over into the resource pool, and then I'd be able to take Gandalf and put him into play. The next phase, phase 3, is questing. In the quest phase, players are going to attempt to make progress towards their end goal, which over here you can see that we're going to need 9 progress tokens there. So if we decide that we wanted to send Gandalf on the quest because he has 4 willpower, which is very powerful for a quest, you would exhaust him by turning him sideways. And then let's say we're going to send Éowyn on the quest as well. That's the first step. The next step is going to be staging. After committing characters to the quest, the encounter deck is now going to reveal some cards. It's going to be 1 card per player. So in this case, if we're playing a single player game, we reveal just 1 card. And you can see it's an enemy. In this case, the enemy does not have any when revealed effects. However, if he did, they would be resolved immediately. And both enemy and location cards will be placed into the staging area to begin providing some threat level that we'll have to deal with. Treachery cards are also resolved immediately and then placed into the discard pile that will be over here next to the deck. If at any point during the quest phase the encounter deck is empty, you would reshuffle the discarded cards from the discard pile to create a new encounter deck. Next, in the questing phase, you're going to have to compare the willpower strength of the heroes and allies committed to the quest with the threat level of all the enemies and locations in the staging area. Now, in this case, you can see the threat strength of the Chieftain Uthak is a 2. Gandalf by himself is enough to get past it with his 4 willpower, but I also committed Éowyn to the quest with 4 willpower, so that's a total of 8 minus the 2 from the chieftain. That leaves 6. So I'll take 6. That's 3, 4, 5, 6 progress tokens, and they will go over here on the current quest card. And if you remember, I'm going to need 9 total to get past it. So I'm almost there. That's a pretty good turn. If, on the other hand, the staging area looked like this, you can see 2, 4, 5, 6, 8 total threat level in the staging area, threat strength in the staging area, excuse me, that matches the 4 willpower strength of my hero and ally that are committed to the quest, and so it's a wash. Nothing happens, nothing negative happens to me, and I also don't gain anything from committing this quest. So let's say the staging area looks like this now. All the same cards except for over here we've got 1 more with a threat strength of 2, so it's going to bring the total threat strength in the staging area to 10 versus the 8 willpower strength I committed. That means I'm off by 2, and what would happen there is you would take your threat dial and increase that, if I can do it here with just one hand, by 2, just like that. So after it's been determined if you passed or failed the quest phase, the next phase is phase 4, travel. And what you can do is you can choose which location you want to make the active location. The advantage of doing this is that an active location no longer contributes its threat strength to the staging area. So let's say we travel here. We're going to go to the Great Forest Web, and we'll see that when we travel there, each player must exhaust 1 hero he controls to travel here. Alright, so this will go over here next to the quest, And usually what I do is I actually put it on top just to remind me that any quest tokens, or progress tokens, excuse me, are going to have to go on top of here first to clear it. And you can see it's going to take 2 right there to clear it. Now we've gotten I'm going to neaten that up a little bit. Now our total threat strength in the staging area is down to 8. Doesn't help us for failing this last time, but in the future it's going to help. Now once an active location has been selected, you cannot select another active location until this one has been dealt with. So if you, on your next questing phase, you successfully quest and you have 2 willpower more than the threat level, you would place 2 progress tokens there, and then you would clear that location, placing it into the discard pile. Let's say instead you cleared with 3. You would have 2 would go there, which would clear it and it would go to the discard pile. And the 1 additional one would then be added to the current quest card. Now we move on to phase 5, the encounter phase. And what we're going to do is first, each player can choose to optionally engage an enemy from the staging area. When you engage an enemy, you're actually going to bring them down out of the staging area into your personal area. And the advantage of this is they no longer contribute their threat to the staging area. Now in this case, I see that based on the threat levels of these enemies versus mine, which is 35 that I've set it to for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm not going to voluntarily choose anybody because I'm about to get plenty of people coming down to fight me anyway. So then we do engagement checks. In a 2 or more player game, the first player will go first doing the engagement check, and he's going to look and see what is the enemy with the highest threat level that meets or is below my threat level on my dial over here. And I see I've got a 35 here with the Dolgador Beastmaster and a 35 here with the Chieftain Ufthak. Now in the case of a tie like this, I can choose which one is going to engage me. So we'll take the Dolgador Beastmaster, and he comes down. Now if it was a 2-player game, the second player would then do the same engagement check. If it's a 1-player game, I'm going to move Gandalf out of the way here. Then I'll take the next one that's coming down. And you can see they have 38, the Dungeon Jailer does. And 38 is definitely more than 35, so they stay right where they are in the staging area. Now we're going to move on to the combat phase. Now in every combat phase, any enemy engaged with the player will attack. The first thing that's going to happen is we're going to deal a shadow card to the enemies. Now in this case, they're both 35 engagement cost. However, if one were higher than the other, the highest engagement cost would get the shadow card first. So what we'll do, now the Beastmaster over here has a forced ability. When he attacks, deal 1 additional shadow card. So we'll go ahead and deal 2. And it's just taking an encounter card from the encounter deck like this and placing it face down at an angle like that, just so it designates it as a shadow card on the attacking monster. In a multiplayer game, you'll deal all of the encounter cards to the first player first, and then to the second player, and so on. Also, keep in mind, if the encounter deck empties during this phase and you don't have enough encounter cards to deal shadow cards out, you're in luck. The encounter deck only reshuffles during the quest phase. Okay, so now I've got 2 enemies attacking, and I only have 1 unexhausted hero. And this is a problem because defending exhausts your hero, and heroes cannot be exhausted if they are already exhausted. However, Theodred here is going to defend against one of these guys. And let's see, he's got a defense of 1 and he's got 4 health. This guy is guaranteed 3 attack. This guy is guaranteed 3 attack. But he has 3 defense, 6 health, 1 defense, 5 health. So let's say Theodred decides to go up against the Beastmaster because hopefully he can at least damage him. So that will tap him, and what's going to happen next is we will reveal the shadow cards. The first one has no shadow effect, so nothing happens. The next one, no shadow effect as well, so nothing happens. And then the combat will resolve, as I'll explain in a moment. However, let's say there was a card with a shadow effect, such as this one. For shadow effects, you only read below that line with the skull. Shadow, choose and discard one attachment from the defending character. If this attack is undefended, discard all attachments you control. Well, as it turns out, Theodred doesn't have any attachments, so that shadow effect has no effect. And we're good to go. So now let's look. 3 attack versus Theodred's 1 defense is going to leave 2 attack that gets through. So we take the damage tokens, place 2 on Theodred. If he ever gets up to 4, he'll be dead. Now let's look at the Chieftain. Let's reveal his shadow card. No shadow effect, but we have no one to defend with. So what that means is this attack is going to go through undefended, which is really bad. An undefended attack is going to automatically deal damage, full damage, to any one of your heroes. And what that means is Gandalf cannot take that damage because he is simply an ally. So one of these guys has to take it. 3, 4, 4. So whoever takes this is going to take 3 damage. Next, it'll be my turn to attack the enemies that just attacked me. However, you can see all of my characters are exhausted, and being exhausted is a problem since you get exhausted when you attack. And say Gandalf actually was not tapped. He has 4 attack, and he says, I'm going to attack the Beastmaster. So he taps, he runs up here to the Beastmaster and hits him. 1 defense versus Gandalf's 4 attack. That's going to be 3 damage that we put on the Beastmaster. And when he gets to 5, he'll be dead. Alright, the final phase is the refresh phase. And what you're going to do is you're going to ready all exhausted cards. So just turn them back upright. You'll increase your threat by 1. And pass the first player token if you're playing with more than 1 person. Okay, so there you have it. There is the rules video for Lord of the Rings, the card game. One other quick thing as far as how you win or lose. The way you win is if you complete all of the objectives on those quest cards, complete all the different stages of the quests. The way you lose is if all players reach 50 threat on their threat counter, or if all the heroes are killed. Either one of those will cause the game to end. There are some keywords and specific effects on the cards that I didn't go over. What we'll do is when I do the playthrough, I'll go into detail with those specific effects as they come up in the gameplay. We will be doing a full gameplay. It's going to be broken down into 20 to 30 minute increments. So I'm not sure how many episodes we'll have of the gameplay, but we'll see that when it comes around. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel, please subscribe. Thank you to everybody that's been subscribing recently. I've seen a pretty good boost in numbers. And until next time, if you're bored online, bored offline.